So you know what's going to separate sellers here in Boston in 2026 from the ones who end up stressed, overwhelmed, and maybe a little bit disappointed? I'll tell you right now, it's not timing the market, it's not luck, and honestly, it's not even necessarily about the market itself. The biggest wins always go to sellers who are thinking about selling their home and resale well before their home is actually hitting the market. They give themselves time, they give themselves clarity, they give themselves time to formulate strategies while most homeowners are waiting till it's too late. They're scrambling. It's not a recipe for success. So today I'm breaking down sales strategies here that Boston sellers can use in 2026 to get ahead and why thinking early is going to give you an almost unfair advantage compared to other sellers. Now, Boston is just one of those cities where homes carry a lot of personality. They definitely carry age, renovations, sometimes mismatched renovations or updates, character quirks, and sometimes you can see all these things in one single room when you're touring a home. But because of that, resale value isn't just built into the final few weeks before you decide to list. It's been built up for the years and years and years leading up to this point that you've owned this home. And so sellers who walk into this process having planned early, they walk in with full control because you're not scrambling to fix things, you're not rushing renovations, and you're not guessing what buyers want. And trust me, buyers and their agents can definitely tell when their renovations have been rushed or you've kind of fixed things last minute here. So sellers have the opportunity to kind of build a story, build a narrative around the home that they've had for years. And when you are able to do that, buyers can feel that. Whether your home is wonderful for entertaining, and we love having family and friends over, and we've opened up this wall to get a nice open feel and open floor plan from the kitchen to the living room to the dining room, or we have wonderful view of the water, great nature outside, and we've built and maintained this patio or deck so you can enjoy that on a spring, summer, or fall afternoon. So when you're preparing early, you're not just trying to sell a house, you're again curating a narrative, you're curating an experience that speaks directly to the buyer's lifestyle or how they picture their life to be in this home. And so in 2026, when buyers walk into a home that feels intentional, it feels confident, it feels well maintained, you feel the story of the home, they respond immediately. One of the biggest mistakes that sellers make is assuming that buyers think the exact same way they do. They don't, especially not coming out of 2025 into 26. Because I'm not sure if you've noticed or if you've been following the market kind of closely, maybe you have, that buyers are being a little choosier here in the Boston markets than we've seen in years past. The days on market, the days to offer, those numbers have been a little bit higher again compared to years past, and definitely higher compared to this time last year. So buyers today are wanting something a little more practical and emotional than perfection. I mean, every buyer wants to move into the perfect home and not have to worry about anything, but they're not looking for perfection. They're looking for simplicity, which is its own perfection in a way. They want, friction-free as possible. They want spaces that are functional, easy to settle into. And I think most importantly, they want homes that feel predictable in terms of maintenance and what they need to plan for down the road. Something that is lacking question marks or has as few question marks as possible. And so again, going back to the market over the last couple of years where I think sellers could maybe throw caution to the wind in terms of updates, improvements, fixes, because in a way they're almost guaranteed to get multiple offers, just the way the market had been working for a long time. Again, the winds are starting to shift that they haven't shifted already in those areas. So everything you do between now and when you're thinking about listing should be centered on building the confidence for the buyers or potential buyers coming through your home. So your buyer feels at ease, they feel that simplicity, they feel they can move in without many problems. So maybe that hot water heater that is on its last legs that people wouldn't be concerned about in the past because they just want to get the home and there were multiple offers anyway, or that roof that needed to be replaced imminently. Maybe those kinds of issues that wouldn't have been issues in the past could be non-starters for buyers moving forward. So just make sure that you're trying to understand the Boston buyer mindset here as we go into the new year, because they're being choosier than ever. And so just make sure you're understanding the Boston buyer mindset as we go into 2026 and the new year. So just make sure you're understanding the Boston buyer mindset as we go into 2026 in the new year, because buyers are being choosier than ever, or at least choosier than they have been in a long time. And so some of those issues that may have been issues in the past are things you want to make sure you're planning for moving forward. Now, continuing along with the buyer's mindset, a little bit building off of that, and even diving deeper into it, because before I even talk to my sellers about photos, staging, pricing, I make sure to walk my clients through what is essentially an audit of their home, called a pre-sale audit, called a pre-sale resale audit, whatever you want to call it, but it just sets the foundation for a successful listing, because it's about taking kind of a stark, emotionless, black and white view of your home and starting to see your home the way buyers will. I'm sure you love your home and you fell in love with it long ago and continue to love it in the years and maybe decades you've lived there. But again, it's about getting back in that buyer's mindset. And what does the first 30, 60 seconds look like when walking up to and entering that home? You never get a second chance to make a first impression, right? And so as a buyer's walking up, is there an old ratty doormat in front of that front door? Or is it nicely swept, maybe landscaped? And buyers are starting to smile as they walk into your home. And how does that entryway feel? Is it awkward? Does it feel welcoming? Are there coats everywhere? Are there shoes all over the floor? Well, maybe there are shoes all over the floor because it's open house and everyone's kicked their shoes off. But that's another conversation for another time. And then how does the home feel as those buyers continue to explore the space? So make sure you're walking through room to room. How are the transitions? They're good flow. Does anything feel awkward? Maybe there's a closet door that opens up into the bedroom door and they kind of clang. Or maybe that's an easy fix where you're just flipping the door and switching the hinges. How does the natural light affect your home? People love natural light. They talk about it all the time. And so how does the light affect where you're spending a lot of your time? Maybe it's the living room. How does it affect those spaces in the morning, afternoon, evening? How does light affect you when you're waking up in the morning in that bedroom or going to bed at night? Maybe there's one room that doesn't get any light, and maybe it pays to explore installing a ceiling light in that room, because otherwise there's just no kind of lighting at all, natural or otherwise, in that room. You start to take the conversation away from why I love this, or why I love this home. And so you start taking the question away from do I love this and why did I love this over the years and decades, and start asking why would a buyer fall in love with this home, and will a buyer love living here every day? So this little shift, this very important audit, just removes the emotion from the entire process, and suddenly you're able to again see black and white without emotion, and from another perspective, what's great about your home, what improvements maybe need to be made to move the needle, and make sure that you're seeing this home from a buyer's perspective and making sure that it's making the best first, second, and third impression as you're getting it ready for market. Now, you don't need to run out and make every upgrade, renovation, or improvement before you put your home on the market. Far from it, because some renovations, some upgrades can actually hurt the resale value of your home if they're not done with intention, if they perhaps mismatch the overall character, feel, or flow of your home. Now, if you're a seller who's made a major upgrade or maybe a minor renovation in the past, I'm sure you've done that with the intention of how it's going to affect your daily life, probably to improve your daily life in your home. So when you're getting your home ready for market, just make sure you check back in on some of those upgrades. And again, how is that going to affect the daily life of the next buyer that owns your home? And I've been in this long enough that I've seen kind of both sides of the spectrum. Little upgrades that had a very positive effect, and some big improvements or renovations that had a detrimental effect, and everything in between. I think of one seller recently who, for whatever reason, had blackout blinds in their living room. And this wasn't a room that necessarily you were getting blinded by light during the course of the day. I guess they just liked it dark. And it definitely kind of affected the feel of the home and the flow of the home as you're walking through it. So this was a bit of an easy fix. Hey, let's keep those blinds up during the course of the day. Let's bring in some window treatments, some drapes or otherwise, so you're making the space a little more aesthetically pleasing and not losing the light during the course of the day, open houses, showings, and so forth. So a bit of an easy fix. I worked with another seller that used to have the laundry in the kitchen, washer and dryer. At some point, they made a decision to upgrade, improve, and move the dryer to a separate room, but kept the washer in the kitchen. And I understand maybe didn't want to deal with having to reroute pipes and getting water over to this other area, but now instead of having the washer and dryer in one space, maybe inconveniently in the kitchen, but now you have the dryer and the washer in two separate spaces. So now you're going to two different rooms to do your laundry. So maybe a renovation that was done. So renovation maybe ultimately that was done to the detriment to the value of the home. Maybe would have been better off just keeping it in the same place. Or, of course, getting the washer and dryer into that laundry area together at one time. So going around the house a little bit and just thinking, like, kitchens, they don't need to be fully upgraded or completely redone. Everyone loves a new modern kitchen, right? But just make sure it's usable and it looks the way it should. If you have some cabinet drawers that are askew after years of use, just get those straightened out. If you have some drawers that maybe aren't closing completely, that's an easy fix, right? You don't need to redo the kitchen. Just make sure that space is usable and looks as it should. Again, those off-kilter doors or drawers that aren't closing, easy fixes, but when they're not looking the way they should, it's a real kind of black mark or pock mark on the overall kind of view of the house from a potential buyer. Also, we're in kind of a new day and age. Actually, we've been in this day and age for a bit, but work from home environments, hybrid, remote work isn't going anywhere. So it probably pays to have a space, either an extra bedroom or a bonus room that's kind of dedicated to a workspace or a place where you can work, recharge, focus, whatever it is. Again, hybrid work, hybrid living, remote work doesn't seem to be going anywhere. So it probably pays, just a little tip, a little upgrade or improvement that you could potentially make to increase the livability, I guess workability at the same time of your home. So, some of these are cosmetic touches and some of these aren't necessarily huge upgrades, but they're lifestyle upgrades potentially to the home, again, to improve the livability of your home. And this livability is something that buyers are going to value more than any trendy upgrade, improvement, or renovation that you make. All right, let's continue along in this vein a little bit because I want to talk about mistakes that sellers make. Sometimes when getting their home ready to list, sometimes these mistakes have been made far in advance and need to be handled accordingly. But these mistakes can be big. More often than not, they're subtle, small mistakes, but they can be the difference between a home lingering in the market for a little bit or selling or moving quickly. So I want to go through these a little bit. And let's start with a big mistake that I've seen, and that's renovating based on personal taste as opposed to kind of universal appeal. And this is something I came across, and this is an instance where it was done well. Because I was touring a home with my buyer clients, an older colonial home, and there had been an addition put on, an additional room, now a dedicated dining room. And so it added to the square footage, but what it really did was open up the space. You saw the flow between the living room, dining room, and kitchen. It all kind of worked well. And you could also tell where it was kind of cramped and tight and maybe disjointed before, but this was really well done. But where the personal taste versus universal appeal comes in is that this was a real opportunity for seller to kind of go different, go modern, but instead they matched the rest of the home, crown molding, colors, character, feel. And so you had the flow there, not just logistically, but aesthetically as well. And instead of just having kind of this odd disjointed room kind of tacked on the side of the home, again, it fit and it fit well. And so much that this home that I think my buyers weren't initially considering that much had them thinking longer than originally I think they were going to be. And ultimately it wasn't a match, but again, because this renovation was done so well, it had my buyers thinking long and hard. And this is kind of medium, maybe big or small, depending on how you look at it, but adding too many statement features that feel just disconnected from the home. So kind of along the same lines, but I was working with a seller that had a lovely 3-floor condo, recent construction, so it still had some of those new construction aspects in there and involved, but for whatever reason, they wanted to add a glass bead fireplace that has its own look, its own feel, and it was big, and they kind of jammed in the corner of this third floor open space, so it took away from the square footage. It didn't really fit anything else in the home. And fireplaces are all well and good, but this again kind of took away from the value, or at least the aesthetic of that floor. And I had some feedback specifically like, hey, we love it, but that's such a real eyesore there in the corner, as much as we love fireplaces. So watch out for statement features that are just disconnected. A fireplace can go in that spot where it was. It just needed to be done better. Small things like a paint job or repainting your home. Maybe your home does need a little bit of a refresh or a fresh coat of paint to have it looking its best. Make sure, again, you're working with universal appeal. So neutral colors. Do not go too bold or otherwise, because those colors can be polarizing when it comes to the appeal and the view of a buyer after it's gone on the market. So if you're going to paint, this is a little thing. If you're trying to go big and bold with your colors, that could be a mistake that costs you in the long run, and maybe the reason why your home lingers. And finally, just maintenance issues. And I'm not just talking about, hey, the hot water heater needs to be replaced, or the roof is old, or so is the HVAC unit. I'm talking about, again, using an example where a seller had the patio where when you walk out on it, you walked from one side of this patio or this deck to the other, it swayed. Like, it swayed pretty good. And to the point where, like, what's going on here? And like, why hasn't this been fixed? Why is this the way it is? Oh, we would never use it. Okay, fair enough. But this is a maintenance issue that you want to be on top of. This is a deck that is clearly not structurally sound. You want to maintain that. You want to fix that. As soon as a buyer walks out there, an agent, and feels the back and forth, I mean, that's going to be a non-starter most probably. So sellers that are thinking about all this early, they're able to avoid these mistakes. And if there are mistakes, they have the luxury of time to address and handle that. And again, as we've talked about in the beginning, time is the biggest advantage you will have when selling your home. Now, here's something a lot of sellers get wrong, and it's the thought that the selling process begins with the listing date. So selling process begins the first day their home goes on the market. I got news for you. That's not the start of the selling process. That's the start of the buying process. The real work of the selling process, the work that determines how quickly your home is going to sell, how many buyers you're potentially going to have, how much competition, how confident those buyers are going to be, that all happens well ahead of time in the pre-market phase. And I know that if you've been living in your home for 10, 20, maybe 30 years, there's a lot of life there. And there's a lot of things to get in order. And so this is where you start to organize your home. And whether that's going to the attic, basement, closets, getting things organized, getting rid of things. If your attic and basement are just full to brimming with all the things you have gathered over the years, it's time to get that stuff organized, decluttering, get rid of it. And so that your attic, basement, closets, if they're filled with clothes and just items, again, trying to get those areas organized so that you actually have some space that people can see, and also so it's looking nice and organized as well. So this is where you start to, again, get things organized in your life and in your home to start to get ready for market. So removing anything that needs to be removed, so forth. You also are going to stage with intention, not decoration. You do need to take those family photos off the wall, or maybe that old high school diploma or college diploma, what have you. And we're going to define the strengths and kind of the emotional anchors of your home, and make sure we're highlighting the positive aspects that buyers should feel when they're walking through. So whether that's a grand living room with high cathedral ceilings and a great fireplace where people can picture themselves, spending the evening, spending time with loved ones, we want to make sure we highlight that and stage that accordingly. Maybe it's a 3-season room where you get to enjoy this wonderful view of nature or the waterfront, with being outdoors without actually being outdoors. And again, making sure that we're flowing and highlighting these areas accordingly. And also we want to make sure that none of your home, nowhere in your home, room or otherwise, feels too cluttered. And we want to make sure that we are staging the home to show the potential of all these different areas, all these different aspects, but also showing that there's flexibility. And so if you have too many furniture pieces, or if you just have too much stuff in this one space, you're not showing the potential or the flexibility of a particular room or area. And of course, in addition to highlighting the most livable spaces and the highlights of the home, we want to optimize natural light. We want to eliminate any friction points that stall momentum. But when you get your home prepared, when you get your home staged accordingly, when you are putting a home on the market that enters that market with clarity and intention, it performs differently. It feels finished, it feels cared for, it feels well maintained. Buyers can, of course, picture themselves living there and the potential and the flexibility of it all, and buyers will reward that. All right, let's start to bring this all back home, because the most successful sellers that I've worked with never wait until they're quote unquote ready to sell. They start way earlier. In some cases, years earlier, because they understand starting the process, the selling process, as early as possible, it just gives them an advantage. They get to control their timeline instead of the timeline controlling them. And that's so key. It reduces surprises, because when something unexpected does come up, and something always does, you have the time to deal with it accordingly. You're eliminating frantic and rushed decision making. And we know that when people make decisions that are rushed and frantic, more often than not, they're making mistakes in that decision making. And because you have organized, decluttered, prepared, gotten into that buyer's mindset and getting your house ready accordingly, you're building buyer trust long before a buyer ever actually steps into your home. You're bringing a home to market that feels complete, it feels intentional, it feels cohesive, and it feels like a place that buyers can see themselves living in. So in 2026, we already talked about it at the beginning of this video, buyers are already being more choosy with the homes that they're choosing or opting to put offers in on and hopefully close on. So this is going to continue from 2025 into the new year as we see inventory continue to rise. Again, buyers are going to be choosier about the homes that they want to live in. So sellers who start early, plan accordingly, they will stand out, just plain and simple. So it's important to know this is not about perfection. It's not about getting that perfect home on the market. It's about clarity. It's about purpose. It's about shaping that buyer experience and shaping that experience in a way that makes your home just feel like the obvious choice outside of all the other choices and other homes on the market right now. So those are your resale strategies to think about here as we head into 2026. I want to thank you for watching this video. If you're thinking about selling your home here in Boston, in the greater Boston area in the new year, or even if you're just beginning to plan ahead, and like we talked about, planning ahead early is the key, my contact info is on the screen and down below. Reach out at any time. I'd love to help you start building your resale strategy now so you can enter the market confidently when it's time. And before you head out, make sure you check out the next video popping up here on the screen. It's going to help you take the next step in building your Boston real estate game plan, either buying or selling. So I appreciate you watching this video, and we'll see you next time out.